This is a timeline in Autodesk Fusion. This keeps track of every step whilst designing, from your first sketch to your final 3D model. You can jump back to any point, edit features, reorder steps, and instantly see your design update in real time. And in this video, we'll use the timeline to explore how to take full control of your designs using a 3D model of a car wheel spacer that you can follow along with, even if you're a beginner in Fusion. So let's fire up Fusion then, and let's start with a new file. And the first thing that we want to do is want to save our file. So I'm going to save this up here, and I'm going to save it to this folder here, but you can choose a place where you like to save it. And I'm just going to call this wheel spacer. So once we've done that, I want to show you something here, because if I click on this, you can see this option here, change to direct modeling. So I'm not going to click on that, but I just want to highlight it. And you can see here that it gives the details on the differences between direct modeling and also parametric modeling. So we're going to be using parametric modeling because this captures the parameters and also gives you features in the timeline as you create your design. So I'm not going to click on that, but I just wanted to show you that because it explains there the difference between the two. And this allows us to have the design history on, which should be on automatically if you're using parametric modeling. So first of all, I want to create a new component. So if I right click on this and create a new component here, I'm going to call this one spacer. And by creating a 3D model together, it will allow me to demonstrate the features of the timeline to you. So it should automatically activate the component. But if not, you can click on it here and it will activate the current component. And the first thing that we want to do is create a sketch on the XY plane. So we're going to come up here, click on create sketch, and I'm actually going to sketch this on this plane here. And I'm going to use the keyboard shortcut C to select the circle. Or alternatively, you can click on it up here. Then I just click on the center point here and just drag this out. And this is going to be 120 millimeters. So if I hit enter there, then you can see that it's dropped like this, and I'm going to move it out just to make that a little bit more neat and tidy. And that's our first sketch drawn. So I'm going to click finish here. Now you can see down here that this is actually the timeline, and you can see the first sketch that you've drawn in here. Now I'm going to hit E on my keyboard, which is the shortcut for extrude. Or alternatively, you can come up here and extrude. And this is going to be 12 millimeters. And I'm going to hit enter on my keyboard there, just to draw that. And you can see that it's added it to the next step in our timeline down here. So the next thing that I want to do is I actually want to create a sketch on the top surface plane here. So I'm going to click on the top surface, and I'm going to click on the sketch again. And then I press C on my keyboard. And I'm going to draw this out from the center point again. And this time it's going to be 100 millimeters. And again, I'm just going to tidy up this dimension, just put that out, just out here. And I'm going to click on the dimension, and I'm actually going to hit X on my keyboard and make this a construction line. Now, I come up here to create, and I'm going to choose a point here. And I'm going to put this on the top. And that's going to mark the point where we're going to put our hole. So you can see that I'm still inside the point tool here. So I'm going to hit Escape on my keyboard. And then I'm going to come down here and finish the sketch. Now your view should automatically rotate back, but if it hasn't, you can click the icon here. Now I want to create the hole. So I'm going to click on the hole tool here, and the point that I want to put there is the point that we've just marked. This hole tool is a really useful tool, but I won't be going into too much detail in this tutorial because it's more about the timeline. You can actually add different things in here like counterbores or tapered holes, and it helps if like a screw or a bolt needs to go into that hole. But for the time being, I'm just going to click the distance here, and this one's going to be all, and that will take it all the way through. And the dimensions here, the diameter of the hole is going to be 12 millimeters. So I'm going to press OK on that, and you can see that it's cut out our hole. And the next thing that I want to do is create a circular pattern. So one thing that we can do with the timeline is we can actually select things in the timeline. So once I've selected it, I can come up here, go to create, and then press pattern, and create a circular pattern. So it's already got the features selected here because we've selected them in the timeline. And for our axis, we want to use the x-axis. And for quantity, we want to set this as 5. And you can see that it redraws that with 5 holes. And I'm going to click on OK there. And now I want to do a fillet and fillet some of these edges. So I press F on my keyboard, and this brings up the fillet tool. And I'm going to select these two edges here. And I'm going to put these fillets at 1.5 millimeters. Then I hit OK on that, and now we've got our model. So let's move back and demonstrate what we can do with our timeline. So you can just click on this one here and actually roll it back and see the stages of the design. Or alternatively, you can go all the way back to the start and all the way back to the end, like that. And you can also skip through them one by one with these arrows and play the design through. So I'm just going to put that back to where it was. And another useful feature of the timeline is, let's say instead of 120mm, I actually wanted this 140. Well, what I can do is I can right click here, press edit and edit the sketch. And if I change this to 140, just like that, and then finish the sketch, you can see that it's rebuilt it to 140. And it's gone all the way back through and updated the rest of the features as well. And another thing that you can do as well is if I right click on this here, for example, and I press on suppress features, then you can see that it's hidden it, but we've still got this fillet there, but it's just hidden it within our design. So I could, for example, let's say if I want to do another fillet here of 1mm, then I can actually draw it after this fillet. Also, something that we can do is we can rename these, and this will help to make them easier to identify. So let's right click on one, for example, and let's press on rename. And we could just call this one outer, for example, because this one defines the outer diameter. And when we go back to this timeline, it's easier to identify it, and it also helps us with modifications. So if I click on modify here and press on change parameters, this is a really useful part of having a design parametric. So we can see that we've got our spacer here, and if I drop this down, we can see that we can actually alter this diameter here. So if I drop this down again, you can see what we've got in the expression here, which is 140. And I could change this to 120, and it's going to modify it in real time. And I do have a full video on my channel about parametric modeling as well that goes into a lot of detail on this topic. So I'm going to leave a link to that in the description. But I just wanted to show you how parameters can affect the timeline history. And something else that I want to show you is if I press create here and create a new component, and this is just for a demonstration, so don't worry about copying this. And I'm just going to call this one component 2. Okay, so we actually have separate timelines here, and you can see that it's removed the old one. But if I go back to the spacer, you can see it's brought back that timeline there. So actually have separate timelines for each component. But if I go back to the overall assembly, we can see all of the steps in our process. So that's one thing as well to bear in mind. And another thing that beginners often get stuck with is, for example, instead of changing these parameters here because you weren't sure that you could change them in the parameters, you might think, well, let's do an edit sketch and just say this was 140. Something that might happen is, if you wanted these to be 120, you may think, well, I know how to do that. I'll just create an extruded cut. So if I create this cutout at 120, and then I just do that, for example, and then I just extrude this down, well, we've ended up with the same result. But the problem is, we've added additional steps into our process and into our timeline that weren't required. And also, if I go back to this one now, because we've got the extra cut, if let's say I wanted this to be 130, it's still going to make it 120 because we've got this cut in the timeline afterwards. And that brings me on to my next point. And this is that you can actually move around these things in the timeline and rearrange them into different orders. So that's just something to bear in mind. And you can actually tidy your model from here because sometimes you might create sketches, for example, by accident. So let me just create this and press finish sketch. Now that sketch might have been a mistake and you don't actually need it in the timeline. So you can right click on it and delete out sketches and features as well. And also something else to note, that different things reference each other in the timeline. So what do I mean by that? Well, if I delete this sketch out here, you can see that we now have a warning on this hole. And you can see that because it's gone yellow here. And this is basically because if I click on this, just to show you what I mean, and when I click edit feature, you can see that we're actually missing the face or point, and it's saying that it doesn't know where to locate it because the sketch is gone. So I can rewind my timeline before this point. Then I can redraw my sketch, for example. So I'm just going to draw a circle here and let's change the diameter on this. Let's say 90. And then let's press X to make that construction line and put our point back in. And then finish the sketch. And I'm going to press on home here. Now, if we wind this on forwards and we right click on this, we can edit the feature and we can actually select this point where it needs to be and press OK. And you can see that that's fixed that error.